Hello and welcome back to another episode of Watching the Boxes Fantasy Basketball Podcast, hosted by #basketball.com, your home for no more trade rumors, I guess, but fantasy basketball tools, fantasy basketball articles, if advanced scheduling, the best on the internet easily, and a bunch of other insightful fantasy basketball help, all on #basketball.com. Go check them out. I'm your host, Mike Catron, and joining me, he's still around, he's still alive, he's still awake after a long and hectic trade deadline. Tyler Watts. What's up, Tyler?
Michael, sadly, we got most of the good deals out of the way yesterday, and it was just a lot of, I don't know. There were still, what, 5 deals, 6 deals? 6 deals, I think, that went down. We didn't get too much juiciness.
I think if yesterday didn't happen, today take one of the big deals from yesterday. Let's say the Tobias Harris deal from yesterday. You threw it in today. Today would be a fairly interesting trade deadline. But because yesterday was so crazy, almost at a frenetic pace, today seemed a little lackluster. It seemed a little disappointing.
Well, and we didn't get the big morning trade like we got yesterday, right? That was fun to get one like early on in the day, and then they just kept coming yesterday, whereas it was all kind of right around that little deadline clump there where we kind of just got them all and they were all dumped on us at the same moment, and that also took away from the fun a little bit, I think.
Yeah, I feel like the trade deadline should be in the evening. I don't know if they wanted to get it all over with before games start, I guess, but I like the drama of Harrison Barnes getting traded while he's playing. Now, apparently, you might know more about this since you covered the Dallas Mavericks, but he knew that he was being traded and asked to play in that game. So all the hand-wringing that LeBron did on Instagram and public, which honestly, that message didn't even make sense anyway, was really for naught.
Yeah, right. So basically, he knew for the last day or so that they were in the works to trade him to the Kings, and he told them, they told him right before tip that the deal was not finalized, but it was probably going to be finalized during the game, and he said, "Okay, I'm going to play."
I think that's really cool, not just of Harrison Barnes, but of the Dallas Mavericks organization. I feel like only a handful of, maybe only a couple of organizations, the Spurs being one of them, could really have that type of, I think, strive to have that type of relationship with their players. To be like, hey, we're trading you, no hard feelings, and it's up to you what you want to do about it. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and shout out to Harrison Barnes, who, by all accounts, just a really, really good dude, and a really, really nice guy and a really, really good teammate. So I think he genuinely wanted to help his teammates, and fair play to him, man.
Well, he's on a playoff contender now, so he'll be doing fairly well in his new location.
Yeah, and that'll be an interesting situation. They got a lot of guys that can play the 4-ish, so we'll see if Harrison Barnes is mostly just a 3 or if he plays that 3-4 kind of combo role like he played in Dallas, and how they kind of run those lineups and rotations. I will say this, Dave Yeager, very frustrating coach, even still. So things could get a little wonky there.
Yeah, I think we talked about yesterday's trades in the previous episode. So if you have not listened to that, please go do that. And also, if you were one of our Patreon subscribers, you got that episode way ahead of everybody else over on patreon.com/watchingtheboxes. So shout out to our subscribers who are listening to this podcast before everybody else as well. So Tyler, let's just get into it. Let's talk about the trade. The biggest news that happened today, which is the trade that did not happen, and that was Anthony Davis going anywhere. I'd like to give a shout out. I don't know who it was. I'd like to give a shout out to the guy who tweeted, some beat reporter tweeted at 1:59 Central Time, seconds before the deadline, that Rich Paul has announced that Anthony Davis would not be traded. Thanks, man. What a scoop.
Wait, this was news?
This was today. Like right before the trade deadline ended, somebody tweeted that Rich Paul has told him that Anthony Davis wouldn't be traded. And it was like, yeah, the trade deadline is basically up. Of course he's not being traded. Like that literally could have been anyone guessing 5 seconds before the trade deadline. I don't think it was really a guess. I think it was kind of written on the walls through most of the deliberations around Anthony Davis.
Well, and I mean, you heard the reports, and I actually think these were probably true of, Danny Ainge was trying to convince all the Pelicans people that basically no matter what anyone's willing to offer you today, I'm willing to offer more this offseason.
I'm just going to throw it out there. No one should trust Danny Ainge. No one should trust the Boston Celtics. And maybe probably shouldn't trust people from Boston either. I'm going there. I'm going all the way there. People from Boston, not the cream of the crop. How about that? Shots fired. Suck it, Boston. Off to a quick start here of just shitting all over cities. Don't worry, we are going to get to Orlando. I'll go shit on them here in a little bit too. But yeah, like Boston is sitting pretty because they do have the best, the ability to have probably the best or close to the best offer if, certain teams like Philly aren't willing to give up one of their superstars.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they have a ton of just young assets and assets that would, make any team be relatively interested in them. And obviously if they're really willing to offer Jason Tatum, that's probably as good as you're going to get for someone like Anthony Davis. And then if you're willing to offer more than that, that would definitely be, the best offer they can get.
So I actually, even though Anthony Davis didn't get traded today, I made a trade for Anthony Davis today, and that ran up close to the trade deadline as well. So I had my own mini negotiation heading up to the trade deadline for Anthony Davis. I had a pending trade to the Anthony Davis owner that he could accept at any time. He had a trade back to me that was not as good that I could accept at any time. We spent hours trying to convince the other one to just hit the button, and that we were going to pull it. We were pulling it all back right at 2 p.m. And I will say I blinked first. I took the trade, and Anthony Davis did not get traded, and that was very, very depressing because I figured he'd be shut down, but it sounds like he is not being shut down. I don't think the league wants that. It sounds like the Pelicans, who probably do want that, aren't going to have that happen. So let's talk about Anthony Davis moving for the rest of the season moving forward. If you didn't buy low on him, sorry, but you might be able to sneak it in now, but I highly doubt it. Anthony Davis, over under on games played for the rest of the year. Let's see. I believe the Pelicans have 20. Let's see. How many games do the Pelicans have left? Let's look at it. 25? 20, 30?
25, 30? You're making this up now.
I'm certainly making it up because I didn't do the proper research before the show, and no one should be surprised at that at all. What would you say the over-under is on games played for Anthony Davis for the rest of the
Well, how many games do the Pelicans have left? Let's hear
God, that's going to be the crux of your answer?
Yes.
Oh my God. All right. It is good hearing that
they have played 55, Michael. Do the math. The math.
Don't make me do math at this hour. I don't have the time. Let me get I'm not joking.
27.
I'm embarrassed. I'm getting the calculator out.
They have 27 games left.
I was really close. I said 25.
So how many does Davis play yet? I mean, it all depends. If they're hanging around toward the end of the season, they might keep playing him. More than likely, he probably plays for the next couple weeks, and they make up some phantom injury that holds him out for the rest of the year.
Let's. I'm gonna go all the way in and break this down for everybody. I'm not even. Since I half-assed the the how many games the Pelicans had left, I'm not going to half-ass this analysis. So let's throw out, let's say the Pelicans are not real. I'm going to guess the Pelicans are not really in the playoff race.
You can't shut him down now, though, because he's going to play in the All-Star game. So you have to at least play him through the All-Star break. And that's what, like, we've seen this the last few years with numerous players, right, where they play up until the All-Star break, and then there's this phantom injury that comes about, and then they're just out for the year.
Yeah. I'm actually going to go the opposite. I'm going to start at the end of the season and say, all right, he's got 27 games max. Let's cut out legitimately all the games in April. So that's 4 full games. I'm also going to say I'm going to cut out one of the games in the last week of March. All right, so that's 5. So we're down to 22. And now I'm going to go cut out any back-to-backs or any like kind of like a bunch of games at a certain amount of days. So there's one back-to-back. Let's just cut out another one. We're down to 20. Let's go 19, 18. And I'm going to cut another one. I'm going to say the over-under is 17 games. That seems fair. 15 to 17 sounds right. So let's just go 16 to make it even. What do you take it, over or the under?
Under.
I am too. But here's the thing. 15 games, let's say, from Anthony Davis is pretty much like 30 games from anyone who's like a mid-tier player. Like a middle round player.
The only issue is, if you're in a head-to-head league where, the playoffs are really the most important part of the season, and Anthony Davis might not be super around for that part of the year.
Yeah, you would take a huge, huge risk, and you're probably not going to. I'd actually say, if you're an Anthony Davis owner, still trading him might be a good idea. I think you still get a lot of money on the dollar since it has been announced that he will play. He's not going to play for probably half of the 27 games. If you're in a roto league, though, quality starts are the only thing that matter. Those are all good quality starts.
Yeah, but I mean, it still depends on what you're selling for. Like, if you're telling me I can sell Anthony Davis for number 1 overall pick price right now because someone tells me he's going to play, right? And I'm selling that to the other owner, and I would still do that because I don't think he's going to be the number 1 player from today forward.
I think I would do a player swap with anybody in the top 10.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. And if I can get like a 2nd round pick and a 7th and an 8th round pick, I'd probably be doing that too.
Yeah. In fact, I might even go down to top 15 direct player swap because all those players in the rest of the top 15, they're going to play the rest of the year. And Anthony Davis he's not going to. He's just not going to. If you're looking to take a risk because you're either out of the playoffs or you're struggling in a roto league and you need, what doesn't Anthony Davis give you, but especially blocks, rebounds, points, then it might be worth swinging just to make up lost time and get all the quality starts you can out of Anthony Davis in a roto league. So, good news. I'd say good news for Anthony Davis. People who are rostering Anthony Davis currently, you have some options when it comes to what you want to do with him for the rest of the season. And that is probably a better place than you thought you would be at this hour with him not being traded to another team.
Yeah.
There was a lot of, even though nothing was traded in Anthony Davis, there was a lot of excitement around Anthony Davis today. But there were a bunch of other trades today, even though Tyler was very disappointed in most of them. The Wizards didn't really do anything. We thought maybe they would do something yesterday, but they didn't. They didn't really do too much today. Let's go with the ones that don't matter too much first, and then we'll get to the big two that really matter for standard league relevant players. But I want to give a shout out to Scalabassier, who is going to, I believe, Portland. And I like Scalabassier. I hope he does well in Portland. Tyler, you know Scalabassier almost better than anybody, other than maybe his parents, maybe his siblings or cousins. I know you recently were stalking Scalabassier, perhaps.
This trade was kind of a fun swap in the sense that it was a little bit similar to that Thon Maker for Stanley Johnson one, where it's two guys who were for high draft picks and first round picks that were struggling a little bit in their current situations, and now they get a new home, and that's interesting. Scal. Say what you want about Scal, man. Scal could be that kind of modern big stretch four type if he gets the right situation where he can actually get some consistent minutes and gets a place where he thinks the team believes in him. Like I just kind of got the sense when he played for the Kings that he never quite really felt like everybody was behind him and that he was, really a part of the rotation at any point. And you would even see that, like, he would play a little bit, then he'd drop out of the rotation, then he'd play a little bit. He's a career 35.7% three-point shooter. So like a league average or a little above for a man who's nearly 7 feet tall.
Yeah, he's like a poor man's Lowry Marketing. But he has a lot of tools that we liked when he first came into the league. Is Portland the right situation for him, though? Probably not, right?
Probably not. But here's the thing, like,
probably a better situation.
Well, Portland's kind of in that same cap situation as some of the other teams we talked about yesterday, where it's the cap situation isn't great there, and maybe that they're going to use him as a 15-20 minute rotation player this year, and maybe they plan to expand that role a little bit moving forward. So it'll be really interesting to see what kind of minutes he can get, but I'm not ready to give up on Scal yet, and it's important to remember Scal's still only 22 years old.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's why we're spending any time on the Scalabassier trade, is that if you're in a dynasty league, you're in a keeper league. I'm not ready to give up on him either. I think he does have some decent fantasy potential, but also it could end up being he is our next generation Mo Harkless, where we think they could be great and they never end up panning out. So shout out to Scal. Greg Monroe off to Brooklyn. Is Greg Monroe going to get enough minutes in Brooklyn to be standard league relevant?
We saw plenty of time where Greg Monroe didn't need that many minutes to be standard league relevant. I think that time may have passed.
Yeah, Greg Monroe is not 22.
Yeah, so Greg Monroe, but Greg Monroe's still like 28. He turns 29 in June. Like, some people forget that. Some people think Greg Monroe's like in his 30s now.
I would have guessed 39 years old.
Because it seems like he's been around forever. Yeah, Brooklyn, another situation where they got a lot of guys who can play minutes, and so I'm thinking he probably plays, maybe 15, 20 minutes a game, if that. And I just don't think Greg Monroe is really worth anything in a standard league in that role anymore.
Yeah, same here. We have another swap. Markelle Fultz going to Orlando for Jonathan Simmons. I'm kind of excited to see both of them playing on a new team, one that might allow each one of them to thrive a little bit better. So this is almost like the third, hey, we're just swapping young guys because they're not working out here, but there's some value. Those are kind of rare trades, and we've had 3 of them in the last 2 days. Is this mean maybe in deeper leagues Markelle Fultz might be relevant again?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, shout out to the Sixers for getting that haul for Markelle Fultz. They got a first and a second round pick for Markelle Fultz, who looked, I'm fair to say, dead in the water. I mean, like, he just can't get right. And
let's put it this way: if there was a franchise that was going to give them a first round pick and one of their young talents, it's going to be the trash pile, the tire fire that is the city of Orlando. So.
Well, Orlando has no one to play at point guard, and Markelle Fultz came out as a point guard, and I think maybe some of the things that made him change his shot and all those things that we saw last year as a rookie was the fact that he was going to be a shooting guard. He wasn't really going to have the ball in his hands as much as he was used to for his whole life. Fair to say, I think Orlando puts the ball back in his hands. You know what I mean? Like, they don't really have anything else to build around that they're super excited about. I think they put the ball in his hands. They let him, kind of be him, and it'll be really interesting to see what Markelle can do. In real basketball, in fantasy, Markelle's always put up stats that are useful. even in 20 minutes a game, like go look at the stat line. Now the percentages aren't great. The percentages are never going to be great. He's not a big 3-point shooter, but we're talking in 22 minutes a game this year. He's averaging 3.7 rebounds, 3.1 assists, nearly a steal, 0.3 blocks. Like those are some pretty decent categories. And if you're telling me he's going to play 30, 32 minutes, that sounded like a really nice fantasy line.
Yeah, I think you should keep an eye on Markelle Fultz in Orlando. Simmons obviously he's going to a stack team. He's not going to really have. I think he'll play a little bit more than people think, but he's probably not going to be too much of a factor on Philly.
And he's another guy who does not produce big in the defensive stats. So, he's the type of guy where he's basically just points and not a lot else. And so even, if he gets big minutes, I'm not really in love with Jonathan Simmons' fantasy game.
Neither am I. So let's get to the meat and potatoes and bones, all three of them, of the trade deadline. The one of the greats, one of the most beautiful beards in the game. Hopefully he grows it back. Niko Mirotic. And what I think might be the best trade of not just the day, but probably of the whole deadline, to the Bucks for Stanky Johnson, who the Bucks swindled over for Thon Maker, and 4 second-round picks, and Jason Smith too, if you want to really throw Jason Smith in there. Niko going to a playoff team that basically needed someone who looked like Niko Mirotic.
If New Orleans is going to make a trade like this, that does not sound good for their hopes for getting a good haul for Anthony Davis. Because, why even give Mirotic up for this deal? Like, what the hell are any of these things going to do for you?
Yeah, I have no idea unless they're just going to throw second-round picks around like they're the Chicago Bulls for the next 3 to 6 years. Stanley Johnson at least is someone who is young enough and has the ability to play NBA basketball on a court, unlike most of the roster after the starting lineup on the Pelicans.
Yeah, but Niko
Mirotic is gone, so
yeah, this trade made no sense to me. From their perspective, and good on the Bucks for swindling him. I mean, great. Mirotic is probably going to take a fantasy hit on that team.
Yeah, I think so.
But
it's not like Niko had been playing like hardcore starters minutes this season.
And
Niko has been relevant, more than relevant. He's been very good in 28 to 30 minutes a game.
Yeah, and I mean, this is just a great fit for that team. They needed, a little bit more shooting, a little bit more floor spacing. I honestly think he can play a similar minutes load. I'm just not sure he gets quite the same amount of shots on that Bucks team with, a few more options. He's also got to get healthy. He's been out with that calf strain for a good bit now. So that's kind of first job for Mirotic. Plus, you got to fit into a new system. And I talked about this a little bit. Some Mavericks fans were freaking out with Tim Hardaway had a real pretty rough game of shooting the ball. And I'm like, well, he's got to fit into a new system. Like, it's important to remember that, these guys are playing with all new players who they don't really know where they're going to be or what the plays are quite yet. So we're going to see that little bump for a couple weeks where he probably struggles a little bit with his shot and finding, some open spaces. And then, he could probably relatively produce what he's produced for the Pelicans in relatively the same amount of minutes. The shot attempts might be down slightly, but we've seen Mirotic average about 15 points a game, each of the last 2 years. I wouldn't be super shocked if he kept that up in Milwaukee.
Yeah, I think it might take him a hot minute to not just adjust to the new system. And I think a lot of people don't realize, or at least they just assume the NBA basketball is just like NBA 2K, where it's like, okay, yeah, I made a trade, this all works out, and that guy's better. All right, cool. Like knowing where guys their spots are, where they like the ball pass, and like you're saying, knowing the plays, knowing what's being ran, it takes a while, and that really does matter. But also, Niko's going to need a little time to come back from this calf strain that he has had. There's a couple injuries this season, so he might have a slow start, and it might be a good time to buy low on him if you still have the ability to make trades in your league. Some trade deadlines in the second the trade deadline ends in the NBA. Others last for another couple weeks or a week after the All-Star game. And I'm for a later trade deadline in my leagues.
Yeah, I mean, I think you definitely have to put it through the real trade deadline a little bit and give people a little bit of time to readjust and react to some of the moves they saw. Because, I mean, like this, this isn't the greatest situation, but there's some situations where the guy takes a big hit, and we're probably going to talk about one, a little bit in with this Memphis-Toronto trade where, Marc Gasol, the player you bought on draft day, is then probably not going to be the same player he is in Toronto. So, you got to give managers a little bit of time to react to that and try to make a deal if they need some additional stats.
Yeah, and well, this is in New Orleans. Obviously, this is very good news for one Julius Randle, who is now going to be playing, I would assume, a ton of minutes for the Pelicans at this point. He is he could be looking at a team that doesn't even have Anthony Davis or half the time, or Nico Mirotic on the floor. So that's good for Julius Randle's, I guess, value.
Yeah, we've seen Randle, kind of take another big step forward this year where he's, averaging over 20 points a game. So good for him. I still don't love his fantasy game in the sense that, it's basically half a steal and half a block a game. But, he's doing a lot of good things.
Yeah, both him and Nico started out really, really hot. They kind of dropped back down, and I think they'll end up a little bit better than they're both currently playing since with the change of scenery. But yeah, I don't think either one of them are going to end up being as hot as they were to start the season. I don't think that's who they are. It's just an outlier that ends up making their averages look pretty close to their normal averages, like we kind of always say here on Watch the Boxes. Any other changes on the Pelicans here with that trade with Nico?
No,
time for Etuan Moore, maybe.
We've seen so many.
Stanley Johnson's gonna get 20 minutes.
Even if we've been in big minutes, though, we've seen so many of these guys like Stanley Johnson, Etuan Moore. Like they're fine, they're fringy, standard league options, but they really just don't do enough to be like, I'm gonna drop this player on my roster to pick that guy up full time. Like it just doesn't happen. And this Pelicans team, especially if they set Anthony Davis quite a bit down the stretch, could be in for facing a big nosedive. So that'll be interesting to see.
I just want to throw it out there that Stanley Johnson is a shit fantasy basketball player. So don't get your hopes up there.
He is strictly a steal streamer. Like that's the only category he produces in that's worth anything.
Yeah. Actually, when Nico going to the Bucks, I actually think might cut into Brook Lopez's time, if anybody.
But is Brook Lopez even playing that much? Like, I still think they're going to carve a 22-minute rollout for Brook Lopez. Like,
they'll figure it out.
That's what I mean. And they have so many, fungible players, but they've actually been funneling, kind of the defense into Brook Lopez when he's in there, and it's like allowed him to spike his blocks back up. So he's playing like 27 minutes a night in Milwaukee, and I think that they're comfortable with that defensive system, and it's going to be hard to replace that, right? Just kind of like funnel the ball to Brook Lopez and let him block shots. So I still think Brook Lopez is going to get a good allotment of minutes. What you're going to see is they're going to, we talked about this last year, and they're a little bit deeper this year. Like they have a lot of fringy rotation guys that they play like 15, 18, 20 minutes. I think some of those guys are going to get kicked out, and they're just going to play Mirotic more. And they're going to go with more of a tight playoff rotation where they play Bledsoe, they play Brogdon, they play Giannis, they play Middleton, they play Lopez, they play Mirotic. Like they just trim the rotation down and play a little tighter.
Yeah, it's actually Ilyasova might just be completely obsolete with the. I guess Nico Mirotic is basically a better Irasan Ilyasova. That's who he is as a player anyway. But this team is so interchangeable. They're going to be really a lot of fun to watch. I'm looking forward to. I'll probably end up at a Bucks game here pretty soon with that lineup, and also to see my boy Nico Mirotic. Gotta go support all those all the.
Are you going to take the
beautiful bearded men?
Are you going to take the Chia Pet with you?
I should get him to sign it. That'd be really fucking cool.
You should do it.
I think he would. He's an awesome dude. Love me some Nico Mirotic. But you had already mentioned the Marc Gasol trade, so let's talk about the big one. Marc Gasol to the Toronto Raptors, which will also be a really fun watch for Jonas Valanciunas, DeLon Wright, and CJ Miles, plus a 2024 second-round pick. Let's go right to the Raptors. Because I think this is the easier one to talk about. he kind of fits right in to the starting lineup. He's going to play at the very least Jonas Valanciunas minutes. Like that's he's going to play much more than those, I believe. But that's the role he's bound to play on this team.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see, right? Like Serge Ibaka is probably going to get limited a little bit, right? Because we talked about this. Ibaka's been playing a lot more center this year. Marcus Gasol probably still going to play about 30 minutes a game, if you ask me.
Yeah, I think his minutes might go down a little bit compared to how he was playing in Memphis, just because their offense does not run around the Mike Conley, Marcus Gasol pick and roll. Like they are probably going to try to get some of that into the offense at some point. Like we talked about with everybody else, it's going to take a while to get used to the system. We could see Pascal Siakam, maybe his role change a little bit. I don't think I'm worried too much about anyone on this team's real trade value, their real fantasy value. Like you said, Serge Ibaka maybe a little bit of a hit. Pascal Siakam maybe a tad bit minutes down. Same with Marcus Gasol. But other than that, I think this is a pretty straightforward plug and play.
And the most interesting part for me about this trade will be watching Marc Gasol's assists.
Yes. Because yeah, go ahead. You're going to say it.
Well, that's what I mean. Are they going to do that kind of high post passing like the Memphis let Marc Gasol do? We haven't really seen that much from Toronto for the big man, right? They're not letting Jonas Valanciunas do that. They're not really letting Serge Ibaka do it a ton. Marc Gasol's a guy who averaged, relatively 4.5 assists for each of the last 3 years. So, is that number going to drop to like 2.5? That's a possibility because he's just not going to be running in that same offense that's going to let him, do that high post passing. So it's definitely something I'm very interested to look at.
Yeah, and that could hurt his value. That could hurt his value enough to maybe sell high on Marcus Gasol. The trade deadline is an interesting time to sell high because everybody's in the news. Everybody's paying attention to the NBA. Everybody knows everybody who's paying attention anyway knows who got traded. So like Marcus Gasol going to a new team, people might be excited about that. And in our opinion, the minutes are going to go down a little bit, and the assists definitely could take a hit because of the system that they play in. So do watch out for Marcus Gasol. Probably a bigger bump than I maybe originally thought. That's a good point about the assists, Tyler.
Yeah, and I mean, they could adapt their offense and change it a little bit to fit Marc Gasol's game too. So
I think they will. They have to. He's that talented of a player.
Right. So I'm not saying it's going to be like some huge drop. It might be 3.5. He might set at 4, which even that's half assist a game matters. But it'll just be interesting to see how that kind of adjusts and evolves over the next couple weeks.
Yeah, I mean, they weren't running that kind of stuff for Jonas Valanciunas, who was only playing about 20 minutes a game. So there's definitely more minutes for Marcus Gasol up in Toronto. And Jonas Valanciunas was only averaging 1 assist. But actually, I think this is pretty good news for Jonas going to Memphis, a pretty lackluster lineup here. Once you get past the top few players, Jonas could end up seeing a very big minutes bump, which when Jonas Valanciunas plays big minutes, he is, he's standard league relevant playing 20 minutes a game. So if he's playing 28, you're looking at a must pick up player here.
Yeah, and you got to think that someone's finally going to give him the minutes, but we've been fooled here before, right?
We've been fooled every season since Jonas was in the damn league.
So no promises, I will say that. But yeah, I mean, obviously, if Jonas is playing 32 or 30, even 30 a night, you're probably looking at double-digit rebounds. You're looking at over a block. You're looking at 0.7 steals, maybe 15, 18 points. This Memphis team doesn't have a lot. They're going to start Jaren Jackson Jr. They're going to start Mike Conley. Why not start Jonas at center?
Yeah, I mean, I just don't see why they wouldn't. They want to lose games, and Jonas has been he's been sitting the fourth quarters because that was causing the Raptors to lose games with his trash defense. So actually, is a very stealth tank. I don't know if that's like 5-dimensional chess or whatever the hell I'm talking about, but I'm going out there and saying if Jonas is available in your league, pick him up right now. There's no reason he should not at least have a flyer taken out on him.
Oh, the Grizzlies traded Shelvin Mack today too.
Oh,
did you see this?
Really? No, I did not see that.
Yes, to the Hawks for Tyler Dorsey.
I missed some of the later trades there. Zubac got traded. Is that worth talking about?
That was a really weird trade.
It was a very strange trade. Also, I really hope the period of time where Jonas is getting used to the team that we see Joakim Noah play like 30 minutes a game for like 3 games. That'd be great.
Yeah, so that'll be interesting. Yeah, and we're going to talk maybe about this a little bit too, and we can talk about that Zubac thing if you really want to.
Yeah, let's talk about it because I think people are. I think I saw a little bit of Twitter excitement about him going to the Clippers, and like he's one of the few people you have to pick up after this trade deadline, and I just don't see it, Tyler. I mean, I think you kind of decimated him in a podcast not just a week or so ago.
Yeah, he's going to be the new Boban. He's on Boban's team, right? He's going to be in the Clippers, and he's going to be the new Boban. They're going to play Montrezl Harrell the lion's share of those center minutes. You cannot play Montrezl Harrell and Zubac together. You just can't do that. That's a lineup that's going to get absolutely destroyed by pretty much any team. So yeah, Zubac. I mean, you guys can listen back to some older podcasts to hear my full thoughts on Mr. Zubac here. He's fun. He's like Boban, right? He's a fun guy to root for, and he can have a crazy stat line every now and again, but there's going to be plenty of games where he's a DNP-CD, even on the Clippers, if you ask me.
Yeah, I actually think they might play him a little bit more than you think he's going to play. But I don't see him suddenly being the starting center or playing 30 minutes a game. I do not think in a standard league you need to go pick him up right now. Maybe if you want to take a flyer on him, if you're in a deeper league, I'm totally for that. Actually, I'd much rather have Gilgeous-Alexander on this team. I'd much rather have JaMychal Green on this team than Zubac.
And you brought up a good point about the deeper league thing, and here's the way I look at that, especially if it's head-to-head in its deeper leagues. Now, in Roto, having a guy who's very consistent is probably even better, right? Because I'm going to get 8 points from this guy every night.
Quality starts, especially someone you're not sure if you're going to start or not.
Right. But in a head-to-head league, especially if it's a deeper league like 14, 16, 20 teams, I actually like to have a guy like Zubac on right at the end of my bench for this reason and this reason only. We know if maybe Montrezl Harrell gets hurt, and we know Zubac's going to start and play like over 25 minutes. Zubac can a lot of times put up a really good stat line. So if I don't have to start that player that often, and I could have a really good game one every 15 games, one every 10 games, I kind of like to have that at the end of my bench on a deeper league. But you got to realize, too, there's going to be some games where you're going to get absolutely nothing. So you kind of got to weigh those two against each other.
Yeah, it might be the game that matters. It might be the playoff matchup that matters. And actually, that is what everyone out there, you should be focused completely on right now. Either you are heading into the playoffs and you are solidifying your team for your first and second rounds, or you are scraping to get into the playoffs right now. Or if you're in a Roto League, you should be focused on those categories, understanding the math, figuring out which categories you could pass people in, figuring out which teams could pass other players, and maybe sending them a trade before your trade deadline for a guy that will help them out but hurt your opponents. For maybe you don't get too much back in that trade. There is nothing wrong with a little easy trading when it comes to winning in a Roto League. So that is probably what we're going to be focusing on for the rest of the season. We have the All-Star break coming up here real soon, and don't worry, we will be doing our annual All-Star draft, where I believe Tyler will mention multiple times that he is undefeated in the All-Star drafts. So good for you, Tyler. I'm very proud of you for beating me every single time, even though it was my idea.
Yeah, well, even more importantly than that, I will mention something that's going to be important over the next couple weeks, and that is the buyout market.
Yeah.
So people forget about this, right? So right after the trade deadline, guys on expiring deals, they get bought out. They go to different teams. Enes Kanter got bought out today. Zach Randolph got bought out today.
Wilson Chandler is supposed to, it looks like.
Right. So those are just some names, and there'll be plenty more over the next couple of days. Carmelo Anthony is obviously one who already kind of got bought out. Wesley Matthews got bought out, and he's heading to the Pacers. Is that correct?
Did he sign? Did he agree with the Pacers already? I hadn't seen that he was going to agree yet, but maybe.
Anyways, while you look that up for me. And Robin Lopez is another guy who's on it. Those guys, some of those guys are going to matter. Like we've seen Enes Kanter, even in 20 minutes a game, play an important fantasy role, right? So I would keep an eye out still. Like don't go to sleep on your fantasy team. Make sure you know what you're buying and maybe what role these guys could play. So Shams Charania, Wesley Matthews will be released by the New York Knicks today and plans to sign with the Indiana Pacers.
Wow,
league sources tell The Athletic. So, and Wesley Matthews on the Pacers could be playing, 30 minutes a game.
Yeah, so if he's playing 28 plus minutes a game, that's a standard league relevant, at least streaming standard league relevant player. So these buyout markets do matter. You're absolutely right.
So I guess just keep an eye out for some of these guys who, and you gotta find the right role, and you gotta, kind of do some digging on yourself. Like if the person's gonna go to a team like Zach Randolph, if he's gonna sign with a contender, the chances he hasn't played all season, the chances of him playing a fantasy relevant role are probably not that good. But if he's gonna sign with the Hawks, who are trying to lose games, they might run Randolph out there for a couple weeks at 20, 25 minutes a game. You never know. So you kind of got to pay attention and keep your eyes open.
Yeah, the waiver wires will be hot with this, and we will continue to pay attention to the waiver wires and those buyouts for you. Guys, we really appreciate you listening, and gals. I bet you there's some ladies listening to the podcast. Who knows? Shout out to you. Respect to you playing fantasy basketball. We want everyone to be welcome here at Watch the Boxes. And listen, we appreciate you listening. And if you want to do us a favor, please rate and review us on whatever you're listening to this to. Or if you want to do us a real solid, go check out patreon.com/watchingtheboxes. Subscribe, help support the show. It keeps the show running. With the trade deadline over, we are going to be pivoting towards different topics, maybe even looking more long-term, and we want your feedback. So please, what you want to hear on for the rest of the year is what we're going to give you. You can find me at Watch the Boxes. And Tyler, where can people find you on Twitter?
You can find me at Tyler P. Watts. And I'm jonesing. I will say this for you people looking. I am jonesing to share my many thoughts on this draft class, but the Mavericks not having to pick have been holding me back from doing so. So I'm looking forward to that.
Tyler is always looking forward to next year's draft class. One of the things that Tyler always puts together a very good synopsis of the draft class going into the fantasy season. Looking forward to reading that. I'm also looking forward to doing a little preemptive talk on our way out of this season. So everybody, good luck on your way to the playoffs. Send us your feedback, and we will talk to you very soon. Thanks, everybody.